10 days. That is all I am asking you to imagine. 10 days of a person lying in a bed, doing nothing wrong, following every instruction, breaking no rule, obeying the gentle advice to rest and take it easy. And at the end of those 10 days, I can show you a body that has quietly begun to fall apart. Older folks, healthy ones, laid flat on their backs for 10 days straight, lost close to 1.5 kilograms of lean body tissue, and almost a full kilogram of that came right out of the legs, out of the muscles that carry them across a room, and down inside the cells, the little machinery that stitches together fresh protein, the stuff that keeps a muscle, slowed down by roughly 30%. 10 days. Nobody fell. Nobody got sick. They just stayed still. Now hold on, because here comes the idea I want to put in front of you. The comfortable one. The kind one. Once a person gets past 70, the sensible thing is to slow down. Protect the joints. Do not push your luck. Sit down, put your feet up, let the body rest. You have earned it. That is the wisdom. Your doctor might say it. Your children might say it, out of love. A neighbor says it over the fence. And it sounds so reasonable that arguing with it feels almost cruel. So I want you to hold that idea in your hand for a while and feel how solid it is. Because I am going to take it apart, slowly, piece by piece, and by the time I am done, I think you will not want to touch it again. Let me first be fair to it. I am not here to tell you the people who believe this are foolish. They are not foolish. They are working from a picture of the world that seems on its face obviously correct. And the picture is this. The body is a machine. And a machine wears out from use. Think about it the way anybody would. You buy a pair of shoes. Walk in them every single day, up hills, through rain, and in a year the soles are gone. Leave them in the closet, and 10 years later they are still good. Take a car. The one you drive 100,000 miles needs new brakes, new tires, a new clutch. The one that sits under a tarp in the garage keeps its odometer frozen and its parts fresh. Everywhere you look in the world of made things, the same rule seems to hold. Use it and it wears. Spare it and it lasts. So why on earth would a knee or a heart or a hip be any different? Rest the thing and it will last longer. That is the whole argument, and it is a good one. It is clean. It is intuitive. It matches 100 things you have seen with your own eyes. And you know, for a dead machine, it is even true. A gear does not repair itself. A tire does not grow new rubber overnight. When you wear down a bearing, that metal is gone forever, and the only thing that ever helps is to use it less. If the body were that kind of machine, a box of fixed parts slowly grinding themselves away, then the kind advice would be the right advice. Sit still. Save the parts. Coast to the finish. So let us take that idea seriously and see how far it carries us. And to test it, I want to go back to that bed, to those 10 days, and look harder. This was a real study, done in the year 2007, published in a serious medical journal. 12 healthy older adults, average age about 67. Not sick people, not frail people. Ordinary healthy folks who agreed to lie in a hospital bed for 10 days and let the scientists measure what happened. Now, if the wear and tear picture is right, this should be the best thing you could possibly do for them. 10 days of perfect rest. No pounding on the joints. No strain on the heart. The parts are being spared. They ought to come out of that bed a little fresher than they went in. They did not. They came out diminished. 1.5 kilograms of lean mass, gone. About 1 kilogram of it out of the legs alone. And that word, lean, matters. This is not fat. This is not water weight you sweat back on. This is the working tissue, the muscle itself, the engine. In 10 days of doing nothing but resting, the very thing that was supposed to be protected was the thing that vanished. And the protein-building machinery inside the cells had throttled itself down by nearly 1/3, as if the body had read the stillness as an instruction and started shutting off the factory. Now the first thing a careful person says, and you should say it, is, wait, 10 days flat on your back in a bed is not really resting, is it? That is extreme. That is not what anybody means when they tell Grandpa to take it easy. And that is a fair objection, and I promise you we are going to deal with it honestly. Because the real shock is not in the bed at all, it is in the living room, in the armchair, in the ordinary quiet day. But stay with the bed one more minute, because there is a comparison hiding inside these numbers that ought to stop you cold. You see, this was not the first time somebody put people to bed to watch them waste. A few years earlier, in the year 2004, scientists ran a similar kind of study on younger people, folks around 38 years old, and they kept them in bed not for 10 days, but for 28 days. 4 full weeks. So now you have a natural experiment sitting right in front of you. Young bodies resting 4 weeks, older bodies resting 10 days. Which group do you suppose lost more muscle from the legs? Here is where the comfortable idea takes its first real wound. The young ones, in 28 days, lost less than 4/10 of a kilogram of lean leg mass. 4 weeks of stillness, and their legs barely flinched. The older ones, in a third of the time, in just 10 days, lost roughly a full kilogram from their legs. Do that arithmetic in your head. The older body was shedding muscle something like 3 to 6 times faster than the younger one. Same act, same stillness, same bed, wildly different price. Now sit with what that does to the wear and tear story, because the wear and tear story has no room for this at all. If resting protects the parts, then resting ought to protect an old body at least as well as a young one. If anything, you would think the older machine, the one closer to the end of its warranty, would benefit most from being spared. But that is exactly backwards from what the bodies actually did. The older the person, the more violently the stillness took its toll. Age did not make rest safer. Age made rest more dangerous. And a theory that predicts the opposite of what happens is not a theory you get to keep. Let me put it another way, because I think this is the crack that the whole thing eventually falls through. A car in a garage does not care whether it is a new car or an old car. 10 years of sitting does the same nothing to both, more or less. The stillness is neutral. It is just the absence of driving. But a living body treats stillness as an event. It responds to it. It does something in reaction to being left alone, and the something it does gets faster and harsher the older you are. That is not the behavior of a box of wearing parts. That is the behavior of something that is listening. Something that takes the stillness as a message and acts on it. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it, and the kind advice starts to look a little less kind. Because if the body is listening, then when you tell a 75-year-old to sit down and spare herself, you are not putting her machine gently in the garage. You are sending her body a signal. And her body, being older, hears that signal louder and answers it faster than yours would. The very softness of the advice is what makes it bite. I want to be careful here, because I do not want to swing all the way to the other silly extreme and tell you that an old person should go run themselves into the ground. That is not the lesson, and it is not what the numbers say. What the numbers say is subtler, and I think far more interesting. They say that the picture we started with, the body as a machine that lasts longer the less you use it, is simply the wrong picture. It is not a little bit wrong. It is wrong at the root. Wrong about what kind of thing a body even is. And when a picture is wrong at the root, patching it does no good. You have to throw it out and build a better one from the ground up. So that is what we are going to do. We took the comfortable idea, we gave it every advantage, we watched it stumble on 10 days in a bed, and we watched it fall flat when age made the falling worse instead of better. Now the muscle is only the first thread. Because the same stillness that empties the legs reaches into the blood, into the bones, into the heart itself. And there is a study, older than the others, from the year 1966 with 5 young men in it that carries the punch I have been promising you from the start. 5 men, 3 weeks of doing nothing, and hearts that seem to age not by weeks, but by decades. Let me show you how that happened, and why it changes everything about the chair you are sitting in right now. So picture Dallas, the year 1966. 5 healthy young men, 20 years old, in the prime of everything. And the experiment asks a simple, almost cruel question. What happens if you take a healthy young heart and give it nothing to push against for 3 weeks? Not sickness, not injury, just stillness. They lie in bed for 3 weeks, and then the researchers measure the engine. Here is the first thing to understand about a heart. It is a pump, and every pump has a stroke, a single squeeze that sends out a slug of blood. In these young men, after 3 weeks of lying flat, the stroke volume, the amount of blood pushed out with each beat, fell by 31%. Almost a third of the pump's punch, gone. Not from a disease, from doing nothing. The heart, like the leg, took the quiet as an instruction. Nobody is asking me to work this hard anymore. Fine, I will get smaller and cheaper to run. And then the measure the physiologists love most, the one they call VO2 max. Say it in plain words. It is the biggest gulp of oxygen your whole body can grab and burn in a minute when you are working as hard as you possibly can. It is the ceiling on your engine. It is stamina itself, written as a number. After 3 weeks in bed, in 20-year-old men, that ceiling dropped by about 26–27%. Better than a quarter of their peak aerobic power wiped out in 21 days of rest. Now I want you to feel the size of that, because here comes the punch I promised you at the very beginning, and it is a strange and heavy one. Those same 5 men were tracked down and tested again, decades later as old men. And the researchers asked a beautiful question. How much aerobic power does a man lose from 30 or 40 years of ordinary aging? All that gray hair, all those birthdays, all that slow natural decline. And the answer was this. The loss from 30 or 40 years of living was about the same as, or even a little less than, the loss those men suffered from 3 weeks of lying in a bed at age 20. Read that again in your mind. 3 weeks of stillness did to a young heart roughly what several decades of aging would later do. Time is supposed to be the great thief, and here is disuse, doing in 21 days what time takes 40 years to accomplish. That is the crack that shatters the whole comfortable idea. Because if rest were protection, the resting men would have been spared. Instead, rest aged them faster than the calendar ever could. So now the old picture is truly finished. The body is not a machine that wears out from use and lasts longer idle. It is almost the exact opposite. And once you throw the broken picture away, you can finally build the right one, and it is a much more wonderful thing. Here is the real body. It is not a car that comes off the line with a fixed number of miles in it. It is a living, listening, negotiating thing, constantly asking one question about every part of itself. Do I still need this? Every scrap of muscle, every gram of bone, every liter of blood costs something to carry and to feed. Muscle is metabolically expensive. It is hungry tissue. And a body that is thrifty about hunger, that sheds whatever it is not using, is a body that its ancestors survived on. So the body watches for the signal that says, keep this. And the signal is not a wish. It is not a good intention. The signal is load. The signal is movement. The tug of a working muscle on a bone. The demand of hard breathing on a heart. That pulling and pushing is a message. And the message reads, I am still needed here, so keep me strong. Take the message away, and the body does the logical thing. It saves resources. It lets the muscle go. It lets the bone thin. It lets the pump shrink. It is not malfunctioning when you sit still. It is obeying you. It is doing precisely what you told it to do by doing nothing. And this is why the aging you see around you is such a tangled thing, part real and part self-inflicted, and almost nobody can tell you which part is which. Look at the honest numbers. Starting around age 30, a person loses something like 3 to 5% of muscle mass every decade. And across a whole life, most men give up about 30% of the muscle they once had. That sounds like pure biological destiny. But now look at the aerobic side. In people who sit and do nothing, VO2 max falls about 10% per decade from age 30, and by age 70 it can be down about 46% from where it was at 20. Nearly half your engine gone by 70. Here is the detective's clue hidden in those numbers. Over that same 50-year stretch, the maximum output of the heart itself, the pump as a pump, falls only about 31%. So the engine loses 46% while the pump loses only 31%. Where did the missing power go? It did not vanish at the heart. It vanished out in the muscles, in the tiny furnaces inside them, the mitochondria, the parts that actually pull the oxygen out of the blood and burn it. Those furnaces are built and kept by use. And in a body that stopped asking anything of its legs, the furnaces got banked and cold. So a good chunk of what we lazily file under aging is not the years at all. It is the sitting. The calendar gets the blame that belongs to the chair. Now let the collapse spread, because muscle was only the loudest voice. Underneath it, quieter and faster, the bones are listening too. Bone is not a dead stone your body is built around. It is a live account, always being torn down and rebuilt, and the balance between tearing and building is set by load, by the pounding and pulling of a body that moves. Take the load away, and the markers of bone break down. The little chemical signs that the tearing crew has gotten busy rise as early as the second day of lying down. The second day. You have not even noticed you feel weaker, and already the skeleton has started quietly writing itself down as unneeded. And the blood. This one surprises people most of all. Lie still for about 2 weeks, and the volume of plasma, the watery part of your blood, drops by roughly 17%. Your body sheds fluid, it decides it no longer needs to move around, and your tolerance for simply standing up, what the physiologists call orthostatic tolerance, falls about 24%. So here is the cruelty of it. The person who has been resting to stay safe stands up from the bed, and the blood cannot climb fast enough to the brain, and the room tips, and the world goes gray at the edges. They get dizzy. They sway. And that right there is where the whole quiet cascade finally reaches out and touches the floor. Because the next thing that happens is that they fall. And falls after 70 are not the small comedy they were when you were a child. Let me give you the real weight of it. More than 1 in 4 Americans past 65 falls every year. That is about 14 million people going down, and falling is not a single unlucky event. Fall once, and your chance of falling again roughly doubles. It is a trapdoor that once it opens under you, tends to open again. And the body we have been describing, the one that let its muscle go, is exactly the body that breaks when it lands. People with serious muscle loss, the condition doctors call sarcopenia, carry about 2.3 times the risk of a low-impact fracture from a fall. Same tumble, more than double the chance a bone gives way, because there is less muscle to catch the weight and less bone to take the blow. In the year 2021, falls killed about 38,000 Americans past 65. Roughly 3 million of them a year turn up in emergency rooms. And the death rate does not creep up gently with age, it climbs like a cliff. For people 65 to 74, it is about 19 deaths from falls for every 100,000. By 85 and older, it is about 339 per 100,000. Not double, nearly 18 times as high. In the year 2024, more than 43,000 older Americans died from falls that we know how to prevent. So follow the chain the comfortable idea built, link by link. Rest to stay safe. Stillness reads as a signal. Muscle leaves. Bone thins. Blood drops. Standing spins the room. The floor comes up. The bone that should have held gives way, and the fall that started as caution ends as the most dangerous thing that ever happened to that person. The advice to take it easy did not protect them. It walked them, gently and reasonably, right up to the edge. And now I have to tell you the part that catches even the careful ones, the people who think they are safe because they exercise. Here is a study of nearly 8,000 adults, wearing motion sensors on their hips, being watched instead of asked. And on average they were sedentary more than 12 hours of every waking day. About 77% of their waking life spent still. But that is not the sharp part. The sharp part is how the sitting was arranged. The people who piled their stillness into long, unbroken blocks, sitting 60-90 minutes at a stretch, had nearly double the risk of dying compared to the people who moved more often. And the ones who broke their sitting up, who never let a single bout run much past 30 minutes, had the lowest risk of all, almost regardless of how many hours they sat in total. Think about what that means. It is not only the exercise you skipped, it is the stillness itself, taken in one long dose, that does the harm. An hour unbroken in a chair is not the same as 2 half hours with a walk between them, even if the clock says the same total. The body is not adding up hours, it is watching for the signal, and a long silence frightens it more than a short one. Let me hand you one more number, because it is almost comic how small a thing can tell you how long a person will live. Squeeze. Just squeeze. There is a pooled study, 42 separate investigations stitched together, more than 3 million people in the pile, and all they measured was how hard a hand could grip. That is it. And when they compared the weakest grips to the strongest, the weakest hands carried about 41% more risk of dying from any cause at all, and about 63% more risk of dying from heart disease, from a handshake. Now I want you to sit with how strange that is. Your grip does not pump your blood. Your grip does not clear your arteries. So why on earth would the strength of your hand predict whether your heart kills you? It does not, of course, not directly. The grip is a spy. It is a little window into the whole body, because the same disuse that hollows out the hand is hollowing out everything else at the same time. A weak grip is not the disease, it is the smoke coming under the door. When I see a number like that, I do not think the hand is magic. I think the hand is honest. It is reporting on a body that has been quietly told in 1,000 small ways that it is no longer needed at full strength, and the body, being an obedient thing, has believed it. So let us go all the way back to that living room, to the doctor with the kind face, to the daughter saying, "Please just rest, you have earned it," and let us finally say plainly what the whole trail of evidence has been screaming. That advice, offered with nothing but love, is built on a picture of the body that is simply wrong. The picture is the machine that wears out. Spare the gears, save the mileage, and it lasts longer. But the body is not a machine you own. It is a machine that keeps deciding, day by day, how much of itself to keep. And it makes that decision by watching what you ask of it. Ask nothing, and it keeps almost nothing. That is not cruelty. From the body's point of view, that is thrift. Muscle is expensive. It is hungry tissue. It burns fuel even while you sleep. And to a system that spent most of its history one bad winter away from starving, carrying muscle you never use is like heating a room nobody sits in. So the moment you stop using it, the accountant inside starts closing rooms. The protein factories slow by a third in 10 days flat on a bed. The meal that used to wake the muscle up gets ignored. The bone begins shipping out its own calcium by the second day. The blood thins itself out, and the heart, with less to push, shrinks its own effort. Every one of these is the body being sensible. Every one of them is the body saving money on a thing you told it you did not want. And here is the cruelty of the arithmetic, the part I keep coming back to. Building costs more than dismantling. It always does. Tearing a wall down takes an afternoon. Putting one up takes weeks, and skill, and a great deal of insistence. Those 5 young men in Dallas lost about a quarter of their aerobic power in 3 weeks of lying still, and it took them 8 weeks of hard training just to climb back and past where they started. 3 weeks down, 8 weeks up. That ratio does not improve with age. It gets steeper. So when a body over 70 takes a fall, or a flu, or a small surgery, and spends 2 weeks in a bed being careful, it is not pressing pause. It is spending capital that will take months of stubborn work to earn back, if it ever comes back at all. And in that light, rest, the thing everyone prescribes as safety, starts to look like the most dangerous instruction in the room. Now do not misread me. I am not telling a frail person to go run up a mountain. I am not sneering at genuine injury or real illness that demands stillness. Rest, when the body is hurt, is medicine. The mistake is turning temporary medicine into a permanent way of living. The mistake is hearing "take it easy" and never hearing an end to it. Because the body does not distinguish between resting to heal and resting to quit. It only reads the signal. and a long silence we saw frightens it more than a short one. That is really the whole secret, if there is one. The body is not counting your good intentions. It is not impressed that you plan to be active someday. It is reading a signal, right now, written in the plain language of load and motion and the small ache of being asked to do something slightly hard. Lift a bag of groceries and the muscle hears we are still needed. Stand up from the chair a dozen times a day and the bones hear keep the calcium, we are still bearing weight. Get the heart thumping until you are just a little out of breath and the whole cardiovascular system hears, keep the pipes open, keep the volume up. The demand is real. None of this is exercise in the gymnasium sense. It is correspondence. It is you writing letters to your own tissues telling them to stay. And when the letters stop, the tissues do not wait around hoping. They act on the last thing they heard. That is why the falls come and why they are so much worse than they used to be. A body that has quietly let its legs go thin and its balance go soft does not just fall more often. It has less to fall with. More than 1 in 4 people past 65 goes down each year, and once you have fallen once, your odds of the next one roughly double. And the death rate from falling climbs from about 19 per 100,000 in your late 60s to over 330 per 100,000 past 85. Those are not accidents that come out of nowhere. Many of them were written months earlier. In a chair, 1 uninterrupted hour at a time. So I will leave the wear and tear idea where it belongs, on the floor, in pieces. The body does not have a fixed number of heartbeats to spend, a warranty ticking down whether you move or not. It is closer to a language than a machine, and disuse is not silence, it is a message, and the message is you can let this go. Everything we have looked at, the vanished leg muscle, the deaf response to a good meal, the calcium leaving the bone, the shrunken stroke of the heart, is the body faithfully carrying out an instruction it was given by stillness. Which brings me to the number I promised you at the start, and I want you to carry it out of here like a stone in your pocket. 3 weeks. 3 weeks of a young man doing nothing at all cost him about as much of his heart and lungs as 30 or 40 years of ordinary aging would. Aging, it turns out, is not the great thief. It is the slow one. Stillness is the fast one, and it does its work in whatever body you hand it at any age in a matter of days. So the next time someone leans in and tells you gently to slow down and take it easy, understand exactly what you are being offered. Not rest, not safety. Just a quieter, kinder way of getting old in a hurry.